alive. Congratulations to the both of us for our aliveness.
It is an accomplishment. There's a lot of people that have not managed it. I mean, most people haven't managed to be alive right now in this moment. If you think about it.
Definitely. There are many who are not here currently.
Yeah, most
of the people who've ever been are not now.
So pat yourself on the back. You're here. You're live.
Isn't there some ridiculously beautiful high number of like the odds of you becoming are also very rare? And so
I think that is a misunderstanding of statistics and math. I think like, I mean, I get where it comes from. I've heard that before, but have you ever heard of the what's it called? It's like the perfect universe theory or I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically this idea that says the Earth, if the Earth was like very little closer or very little farther away, or if the axis of the Earth was slightly further this way, or if the sun was slightly bigger, or if Jupiter was slightly smaller, or if all of these different things weren't in place, life wouldn't be possible on this planet. And people will say that's proof that it was put here, that this is built for us, because look at how perfectly it's tailored for our survival. But the problem with that line of thinking is that the human mind is not particularly good at comprehending infinity. And when you think about an infinite number of planets, the idea is the only reason you're here is because the conditions happen to be conducive to life. If they weren't, there wouldn't be anybody here to be noticing how perfectly it was designed for them.
Fair. Yeah.
So I think that same flaw in thinking goes into the chances of you being here. I mean, I guess the chances of you being here from a certain perspective are just infinite because you're perfectly unique and
sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's 100% chance of us being. That's how math works.
Exactly. Either way.
Also, what's really fun is that idea that like that observing something changes it, and it's part of the thing. But just we're attempting to come up with science that like we're so self-involved. We cannot take ourselves out of the equation of how we're looking at a situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I am thrilled to be here. Gush, gosh.
Yeah, you want to start the show?
Maybe. Here we are. We're in your face and on a computer or a screen someplace we don't know because we're not there with you. Okay, your turn.
That was really good. I like that. No. Okay. No, I don't do improvisational music. That's not a skill I ever picked up.
That is fair. Well, that is my 7th time. And anyway, here we are. I am Adrianne Gunn, and I'm here with my friend.
I'm Nicholas Rave.
And you have joined us, and we have joined you. This is happening now because we are the Enlightened Couch Potato Show. We like to geek out as deeply as possible about TV and movies because we believe that they can be tools of transformation.
Yeah, so I actually managed to what? I didn't grab. You like handed me the baton and I like almost dropped it.
I exist too. My mouth makes sounds.
I didn't know you were gonna hand it off right then. So guess what? I watched both of the movies that you suggested. So we have 2 things we can talk about this week.
That's amazing.
Do you want to do like quick recap on other things?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, okay. So you maybe talked about this movie, but you didn't talk about this movie. Talk about this. I ended up watching Bloodshot.
Yeah.
Which is a Vin Diesel movie. And the cool news is that I watched Bloodshot after watching this movie called Vanquish. So that's 2 action movies this week. And so Vanquish is an action movie with Ruby Rose and Morgan Freeman. What's fascinating is I just assumed that it was not going to be good, even though Morgan Freeman is in it, because I am actually waiting for Ruby Rose to like surprise me. There's stuff and there's times when she surprises me. I'm just not my favorite of the actors, and I think she's growing and built. I mean, she's not. I mean, good for her. DJ model, gets to be Batwoman for a while, and now is in action movies. Good. What's amazing about Vanquish is that I think that they filmed it. I looked it up because I'm like, wow, this movie has some interesting choices. I think they filmed it in 2020. So during COVID world, I am noticing a lot of strange choices in TV shows and movies that are happening in this time where they're purposely finding ways to position people distanced, or they're doing scenes with only a few people in a room at a time. And this movie is attempting to be very visually interesting, and like the music is like, it's doing artful things, and there's something that's flat about it. And then I watch, what's the premise? The premise is there's this woman who used to be, I don't know, a drug runner or something, and a former cop commissioner gets her to do his bidding, and so she has to like she'd given up the crime, and now she has to crime some more. Yep, that's as good as I can do.
I've seen that before.
Right, yeah. So then I watched Bloodshot, having watched like an underwhelming movie that I did laugh a couple times. There were moments that were like, wee. And then I watched Bloodshot, and it's actually, both of the movies are just straight ahead action, insert, shoot some people, beat up some stuff, car chase, whatever here. But Bloodshot actually works because I'm expecting very little from it, and it delivers. One of the things I'm like actually really thrilled about for Ruby Rose is that she, like, we've come to the point where women can just make movies that aren't that great, and they're just action movies. That's a blessing to just be able to like be cast, do the thing, because there were tons. I grew up on awful action movies with people who they couldn't act. That's like, we've made it, people. We have made it. Thank you, feminism. Shitty. Anyway, but Bloodshot's actually quite fascinating. All of the tech ideas that they came up with, really fun. The visuals are great. There's this scene that is very colorful. There's this scene where there's a crash in a tunnel of a flower truck, and then people are fighting, and it's just like blood and smoke and colors, and Vin Diesel is, I don't know, muscly and grunty. What's the premise of the movie? He's killed, and then he's out. He's a what, military dude? He's a soldier who's quite good at what he does, except he gets killed. Oops. And then someone purchases him and fills him with nanotech, and he can regenerate himself, and he's super freaking strong. That's amazing.
Yeah, there was a Jean-Claude, speaking of action heroes who can't act, there's a Jean-Claude Van Damme series called Universal Soldier, where the first one's not bad, and then I think there was some really garbage ones, and then I can't remember what the one was that had Michael Jai White in it, and he is so awesome. Anything with him in it. But I mean, again, they're like schlocky action, and I thought Bloodshot felt like a movie that was like about 10 or 15 years behind. But that's okay. Sometimes those are really fun. Like, we watched have you ever seen, do you know Tony Jaa is?
I don't think I do.
Do you like martial arts and kung fu type movies?
I do. I don't watch them enough. I have to catch up on, what is it? Ip Man. Yeah. There's
a young Thai superstar who came on the scene with a movie called Ong Bak, also known as Muay Thai Warrior, and it's so beautifully simple. Like, the story is, there's a very pure young man who's been trained in martial arts but isn't allowed to use them because he's going to become a monk, and then some gangster assholes come into town and steal the head of their statue, and his job is to go back into the city to get it back. And it's very simple, and and it's just an excuse for one action scene after another, and they're pretty freaking great. Tony Jaa is the shit. And the movie, just like, you'd never seen anything like it. They'll do things where he'll like do a flip between two panes of glass that the people are carrying or something, and he'll like do a flip upside down between this, and they'll show it 4 times. They'll like one camera angle, another camera angle, another camera angle, and just because they're like, we know why you're here.
Nice.
And he's amazing. He obviously does all his own stunts and stuff. So he's done a series of other movies. The second one, called The Protector, was good. But sometimes you want simple, formulaic, by the books, hero triumphing over challenges. And
totally.
And
sort of in that same thing, and I think because it's been a couple weeks, I don't think I got to talk about it. Birds of Prey, finally watched it with Harley Quinn. I have no idea where the heck she learned to fight, by the way. That's just, she was not the same fighter in the first movie, Suicide Squad, and then suddenly she's just like epically good at fighting. And for a second, it seems like she's accidentally good at fighting, and then she's epically good at fighting. Very strange. But all of the choices and the fun with the like female characters kicking butt in that movie, all of those fight scenes went on longer than I expected. And then I was like, oh, wake up. You like this stuff. Please pay attention, because again, my attention span is diminished. But dang, I've watched some good action flicks right now.
Yeah.
I did have a curiosity. So in Bloodshot, one of the themes is fascinating. So there's this question of the person died, and then a billionaire inventor brought him back. So does he belong to himself, or is he property of that company?
Right.
It's a fascinating question. Like he didn't buy his own tech that's in his body.
Right.
And I also,
if I take this technology back, you will cease to exist.
Right.
So I own the tech. Does that mean I own you?
And are we going to have to deal with that in the future? Are we going to be paying like monthly for our body parts? Just like, are people going to be making residual income on our existence?
There's a movie called, I want to say Time's Up is the name of it, with Justin Timberlake and I can't remember who else. That movie kind of was rather on the nose about it, but it was literally just, we've conquered death, but you have to pay to stay alive. So if you have infinite money, you can stay alive infinitely long. But when your timer runs out, you just die. And everybody has a timer, like a timer on their arm. And like that was a way of kind of describing the same concept. But I also feel like Altered Carbon played with that a little bit too.
Yeah.
But I do think there are going to be some very weird ethical considerations that seem so outlandish that they barely even register as science fiction for people. Things like uploading your consciousness.
That's coming soon.
At some point, like what is that? Who is that? If there's an exact copy of you inside of a virtual system, is that you? Who are you at that point? If there's more than one of you going around, and I think things like body modification with, there's going to come a point when people are going to start creating replacement eyeballs that are better than your eyeballs.
Yeah,
and then people are going to go, I'm fine. Just give me the upgraded ones.
I don't know which one's going to win the race first, whether it's going to be biotech or so in the longevity, if you're like going to put technology in your body to replace parts, or if we're going to reverse aging, because part of the RNA research that got the vaccines has also been part of longevity studies of turning on and off like senescent genes and allowing you to just like dial back your age 10, 20 years through.
Yeah, more and more really serious researchers are shifting their paradigm to think of death or aging as a disease
Yes.
that is curable, that there are very specific functions that if we figure out a way to reverse them, and the technology is not there yet, but some people have said there may be people alive today who will never die. That there may be some people who are born right now who will live long enough to see technology. That might be super optimistic. There's no way to tell. I think predictions that far out into the future but I would certainly think that lifespan is going to start extending.
Yeah, I think so. I've been obsessively listening to books about longevity and health and these sort of things this last year. And I think the truest and onlyest thing at the moment that's in the way of actually figuring out longevity and having medical interventions for it is how epically slow and dysfunctional our government is, and the ability of like how much we have to involve humans in voting and that sort of thing, because and maybe that's great. It's just that we don't live in a place where our government is up on technology all that quickly. Remotely. And it's really embarrassing. And it takes a very long time for them to get anything done, which is also.
Yeah, I think another problem with something like this, even if you could get it out to a wide number of people, is I don't think people can wrap their head around what we're talking about. Like, first of all, there's a million little problems that need to be solved to figure out this big problem. But the big problem is the most important problem. It's death. Like, that's the thing. So it's like, why wouldn't we pour all of our resource? If there are people who are qualified and credible who are saying, I think we can solve this problem. I mean, there's other problems that need to be dealt with too that are hard, but you're right. It's a lot of stuck gears in a giant machine that it barely moves. Totally. And it could be so much more efficient.
What have you been watching?
So
hard transition.
We watched the whole season of something called Solar Opposites. It's a spinoff. Not a spinoff. It's made by the co-creator of Rick and Morty and done with the same animation team.
Right.
Rick and Morty is Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland. If you take Justin Roiland out of Rick and Morty, you just have Dan Harmon. You get Community, basically. If you take the Justin Roiland out of Rick and Morty and just have that by itself, you get Solar Opposites, and it's pretty nuts. From what I understand, Justin Roiland is kind of pretty crazy, like on his own, like he's just a wild person.
Yeah.
And it's funny and dark and clever. I like it. I can't say I like it as much as Rick and Morty, because I think it's a little more, I'm going to say this, it's a little lighter, even though it's like super violent. It's a little lighter in the sense that it doesn't have this just tone of like existential nihilistic and I love that about Rick and Morty.
Right.
We also watched a series called Invincible. It's an animated superhero in the vein of The Boys, sort of.
Cool,
but
yeah.
What's really interesting about it is that the animation style is so intentional. I'm not going to spoil anything about this one. But I will say that it starts out and it feels almost like Captain Planet, not Captain America, like Earth, Water, Wind, Fire, and Heart. Your powers combined. I am Captain Planet. Like that. Like 90s Saturday morning cartoon.
Awesome.
But then in the last 5 minutes of the episode, it takes a fucking turn. And I'm watching the whole thing up to this point, having heard people talk about it. And I'm like, what is this it? This is Saturday morning cartoons. I mean, it's fine, I guess. What the hell am I watching? And then in the last 5 minutes, you're like, what the hell am I watching? And it all of a sudden becomes this mystery where something happens in the first episode that you're like, what does this mean? Why is this happening? What is going on? And then you follow the main character who has no idea about the mystery until the very end of the season.
Nice.
And it's amazing. It's so intense. Like they play up it's super violent. So don't watch it if you're not into that. But the way they play with certain themes, even high school kind of stuff and family, but then they ramp up the sci-fi to the level where it starts asking questions like a lot of the Marvel movies do, where they're like, well, what if you really did have these superpowers? What would it really be like? And I think I like it at better than The Boys. Like, I think it was more consistently like, whoa. That was great.
Nice.
So then, because we finished Death Note, we decided to keep going with the anime education. And we looked up best anime series of all time, and on several lists at the top or near the top, I found one that I've always wanted to watch, which is called Cowboy Bebop. Do you know anything about it?
No, I thought you were going to say the Avatar Airbender or whatever.
Oh, I've seen that 3 times.
Oh, okay.
All the way through. It's incredible. I just haven't introduced Faye to it yet. So we're watching Cowboy Bebop. It's this it's got a Firefly feel to it. It's also got a little bit of the Mandalorian feel to it because it's about a bounty hunter, but it's a bounty hunter flying around in a ship called Bebop. And 2077 in the future, a lot of martial arts, but it's beautiful animation, like incredible designs and choreography, and apparently one of the best English dubs of any anime ever. So this is one of the few animes you can actually watch not in Japanese.
Cool.
But the craziest thing about it is the soundtrack is all jazz. Like
what?
Intense jazz, like some of it bordering on a little bit experimental jazz.
Sure.
And like they occasionally will strategically use other music, but it's the bebop vibe it's got this incredible opening song for the credits. It's super fun, and it feels like it's building to something. It starts out really patient and it feels very light. But I'm starting to get the sense now as we're watching it that it's like, oh, there's depth here. And I think by the time it gets to the end, it's going to be pretty epic.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's what we've been watching. Any movies? We watched the Mitchells versus Machines, or Machines versus the Mitchells. It's a new animated movie by, I think the Lego Movie guys were involved, but I don't think they actually made it.
Yeah, somebody added that to my thing. I see it on the list. That sounds familiar. It
was very good. It didn't blow my mind like the Lego Movie or Moana but I would put it up there with like it had a bit of a Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs vibe to it. That it feels very a product of the times, and I can attest to 10 and 11-year-olds really loving it.
Nice.
So it definitely feels like it's got very obvious YouTube and type influences, because the main character is like making videos. That's what she does. So there's a lot of creative editing, and it was fun. It didn't, like when I think revolutionary animation, I think like Into the Spider-Verse, like that movie. Totally. Blew my mind, and it hit on every level, and kids loved it and adults loved it. This one I didn't feel like was quite that level. I didn't, but it definitely was touching, pulled the heartstrings. It was good. It was okay.
That reminds me, it's so interesting I've been thinking about how differently I watched things when I was much, much younger. And like movies could get away with stuff. I missed a bunch of the jokes with a lot of things I didn't get. Thinking about also just how odd shows and movies were back in the 80s and 90s, and they couldn't get away with that sort of stuff now. But like one of the shows that the movies we decided to watch, I think I watched it when it came out, or maybe 6 months after. We're talking about Ghost in the Darkness. I remember loving that movie. I may have been looking at the date. I may have been 16 when it came out and I watched. And then watching it again with adult eyes and different sensibilities was a very fascinating experiment. Because I think I've only watched it maybe once or twice before. When was the last time you saw it? It's been over 10 years.
Long time.
Years.
I want to say I discovered it in my teens as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I watched it a couple of times and really loved it. I absolutely felt. And there's something, I mean, we'll go into a little bit of the talk here. I wanted to talk about the effect that based on a true story has when you're watching a movie or a show or a story. When you're experiencing a story, you didn't know beforehand?
I didn't know until even after. So I watched it Tuesday night, not this recent one, like a week ago. I didn't know until after. It was like looking it up and asking some questions. And like, what is it? I had no idea it was based on a true story.
I knew beforehand, and it changed me as a kid. Like, I have to say, I feel like my the realizations and insights that I had about animal psychology watching that movie as a kid have been a part of everything I've learned about psychology from then. And it's like, how would this happen? So the scene, without spoiling too much, the scene in the cave,
right,
where Michael Douglas's character is like, lions don't do this. And I remember thinking about that for hours and like talking to my friends about it, being like, what would make that? It happened. It was real. It really happened. They were serial killer lions. That's what they were. They got a taste for human blood and they didn't want anything else.
Right.
And they collected trophies of the humans. Never in history has anybody ever recorded anything like this before. But certainly not one this famous that killed as many people. And the crazy thing is, like, when I mentioned it to Liz, she's like, yeah, I've seen that lion.
Oh, yeah, because it's in Chicago, right?
In Chicago. And so Faye, when we watched it, she has seen it, and we rewatched it to make sure it wasn't too scary, but we're going to watch it with the 9-year-old, and he's seen the lion too. So we're going to be like, you've been to that museum and this is real and it really happened. So there's something about watching a story where you have the frame in mind, this really happened. Now, we have to be honest and say, like, if we're honest with ourselves, we know obviously based on a true story is not a documentary.
Right.
And even documentaries twist the reality by being selective about what they show. And a movie is dramatized. Like, I don't know the part of the story where like who got eaten when and the specifics of it.
Like
I
how many
doubt,
people.
Yeah, I doubt that they were that accurate with it.
We might need to go back and briefly synopsize the Ghost. And the Ghost in the Darkness is about a gentleman who goes to Eastern Africa to build a bridge. And this is an expert. This is a person who builds bridges in many countries. And he is thrilled and excited. He leaves his wife, who's expecting a child in about 6 months or so, to go and build in this. And he's built in India and all sorts of other places, but he's always wanted to be in Africa. And so he gets there, and then there are these lions. Now, there are tons of people from different tribes and people from India and people from all like different countries there working on this project. So like managing those humans is a big deal, and their philosophies is also part of the movie. But he goes in and he's supposed to build a bridge, and there are lions attacking the workers.
So he ends up handling one lion, but then these other ones come in and they try everything over and over and over to try to defeat these lions. And then it escalates, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they end. Yeah. Go ahead.
I love that when you watch like the trailers for it, the theme that they pick out is just like man versus nature or technology in the wild. We're just like, what, a heart of darkness again? This idea of like taming Africa, and that it's weird because in sort of the colonial collective unconscious, it's part of the story. The colonial, like railroads crossing land, bridges being made, breaking through, and like it's a big manifest destiny,
right?
And the whole like expansion of many different countries trying to, and in this own movie, they're trying to beat the Dutch. I think they're racing to
the French and the Germans.
Yeah, kind of gross. Also fascinating. It's part of our sort of shared history in different parts of the world of who colonized us and how did that go and what happens when humans collide and you collide with nature. So that's like the very obvious theme.
Right.
But there are also some, like, I decided to take some interesting paths with what the themes or the learnings might be. What did you, I mean, your usual thing is that something it represents the unconscious. That works in this movie too.
I didn't do it that way.
What'd you do?
Well, I was mostly experiencing it again as I did when I was a teenager and going through that. And I was thinking about, there's a couple of scenes in the movie when people get dragged away by the lion.
God, yes.
And it's so visceral. Like, it's so well done. I feel like this movie is not, I there's weak points for sure. Mm-hmm. It's not Jaws. Jaws is a masterpiece, right. But it's really good. And this thing about a 700-pound monster dragging you into the darkness. Mm-hmm. When I talk to people about going into your unconscious, I talk about it as the dark forest. The dark forest at night is an archetypal place of the fear of the unknown. Right. And there's something I find weirdly valuable about cultivating the kind of, I want to use the word awe because that's how I describe it, but the fear and respect of nature and putting yourself back into the food chain and being like, there are places where even to this day, you are not the top of the food chain. Right. And we get so complacent. So just thinking about like that experience of just there's nothing you can do and like and then getting into the heads of the lions. That was the thing that I was so fascinated with as when I first watched it, that I was like, what happens? What how does that take place? Yeah. Where for them it's just fun and pleasure and humans are a fun challenge and I wow.
Sick game of get them.
Yeah.
In the most unexpected ways. So we're both, I'm a July Leo and you're an August Leo. My mom didn't get so into astrology that she was like learning any of the science and the stuff, but she was just very big on like my lion, and she was a ram and she loved her Aries and all this stuff. And so, you know, being highly rewarded for Leo traits in my main here, right? I remember as a high school student just being like enamored with how powerful and terrifying and wonderful the lions were. And I'm like, get them. Right?
Totally. Like
powerful,
my cats look at me like that. Like they look at me with a look in their eye that says, if you were smaller.
Indeed. Yeah. So that was part of one of the things I was thinking. I do love that. So I was thinking about it. So it's literally a project management movie. Guy goes to unknown place to build a thing and get something
deals with extreme challenges in the face of a goal that he's trying to meet. It's right. Good storytelling in that way.
Yeah. So in my own world, I was thinking of what are the most for my own journeys, my own goals, my own projects that I'm attempting to do, my own, like if I'm just thinking of creativity, if I'm just thinking of expressing myself fully, here's this bridge maker trying to make a bridge and in the place he's always wanted to be, right? So it's set up for opportunities, and it could be interesting to just think of challenges, but what if the two sadistic lions are doubt and fear? Because the problem with doubt and fear is as they attack and they're relentless, you can't really fight them in the standard ways that you might fight them, because they're awful and terrifying and chip away at the ego and the ability to feel confident. But you also can't continue to exist without reckoning with the two, right? And so I started watching it. I was watching it and allowing things to make sense to me. And then after the movie, I was just like, what does that remind me of? I was like, what if we watch this as a way of how would one person achieve their goals in the face of doubt and fear? Because that's just life, right? I think of those, or like haters.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I feel like for me, when one of the questions that's part of our system, I think, is what does this remind me of, is a really good question. What does this represent? So when you're watching something, what does this represent? What do the lions represent? So I like the idea of abstracting even further to just obstacles.
Sure.
Because then you can go, well, doubt and fear are an obstacle. So that could be what they represent. But if they're just obstacles in general, but there's something, when you brought it up that way, there's something that clicked that, how do I put this? What I'm going to say is it's not paranoia if they're really out to get you. Sometimes in a lot of personal development stuff, they talk about obstacles as like it's all in your mind, and it's really, the universe is a loving place and there's so much opportunity out there and you should just embrace it. And it's true most of the time.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are actually sadistic, evil fucking monsters that are trying to eat you, and you have to fight that. When you think about, I've got a goal, and what kind of obstacles do most people face? Like, oh, somebody said no to me. I'm worried that I'm going to get rejected. Yeah. I'm going to fail. And like, those are the things. But like, no, if you want to get your goals, you have to be ready to be so committed to your goal that you will not leave. He didn't leave. Yeah. He didn't leave even after the expert hunter even after all this stuff that happened. He stayed and he accomplished the goal.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I put haters and critics. My own year has had a lot of fears and doubts about.
Those are your lions.
my lions this year have been fears and doubts about people who are my perceived enemies fucking with me and keeping me from being able to achieve my goals, and people who are my perceived allies fucking with me.
Yeah.
Like, right. And that's kept me from like doing stuff. And I was like, oh, this reminds me of that terror I've felt.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what if I'm haters, critics, people who are shit. Like I am a breasted human, and there are people who really love to send death threats, and it's epically gross. The better you get at attracting people into the world of entertainment and build an audience. And if you're female bodied, you're likely going to get death threats and such. Yay! I'm winning, right?
There's something about that. This is a great example of it. Not that I'm saying like you should do things recklessly if somebody's actually threatening your life, but it's like so much of the encouraging get out there and follow your dreams stuff is like, don't let the obstacles set you back. But that feels so light and weak. But when I think of the strength that has to be there to be like, no. I'm going to keep going if the fucking wheelbarrow breaks, or if the train breaks down and we don't have supplies, of course I'm going to figure that stuff out.
Yeah.
But that's like bare minimum. But no, what kind of person do I have to be? What kind of state of mind do I have to be in to be so committed to my goals that even if there are lions that are so deadly that people are calling them demons, and practically are,
right?
Then you're gonna no, I'm still not quitting. That's a really powerful interpretation of this. I love that.
Yeah. And I'm not thinking of other movies that have the same theme at the moment. I mean, like every sports movie is like, every movie's like obstacle.
But I like his very specific, like they set it up in the first scene of the movie is this: here is your goal, here's your motivation, and they set up the dual motivation of he wants to finish it because he's never been late, but he also wants to finish it so he can see his wife, and he wants to see Africa, and it's really good writing. And Val Kilmer's so pretty.
He is so pretty.
He's true. So gorgeous in that movie. I will say one thing, having watched it much later in my life, Michael Douglas is not necessarily his performance, maybe his performance too, but the writing from Douglas's character felt a lot less profound than when I was 16 or whatever, and I first watched it. I was like, is this supposed to be the Obi-Wan character? Because I'm not buying it.
I think Michael Douglas is essentially acting in a completely different movie than everybody else.
In this particular movie?
Totally
right.
Well, and Michael Douglas and Val Kilmer comes from completely different eras of filmmaking.
Yeah.
So everybody else in the movie is doing a naturalistic acting style. You like believe they're the people, they're embodied, and Michael Douglas is doing a caricature. And when I talk about sort of vanity in acting, I get the sense that he's doing a caricature and he's doing an homage to a thing.
Yeah.
And he's also watching himself do it in every scene. And it's not in rapport or congruent with anything else that's happening.
His performance definitely did not hold. There's so many people that could have done. I'll tell you another thing that stands out. And then unfortunately I got to wrap up at 3:50. So, so we'll have to get the next movie next time. One of the things that I remember for my whole life, I remember the scene in the cave, and I remember the guy who said, I killed a lion once, and he's like, how did you do it? With my bare hands. And then later on, when Kilmer looks at him and does this, and like that was such a moving and touching moment of like they shared this thing, and then this was like a sign of mutual respect, and like I loved that writing, that all of a sudden this has so much meaning. And that was such a cool moment. And then what happens, they set that up perfectly for you to really care.
I was also rooting for the Lions when I was 16 differently than I was, because I'm like, go Lions, I am a lion, rip them apart. And now I'm just like, I have goals, I want to achieve things. It's scary out there. What's my Africa?
What's the bridge? What's the river I'm building a bridge over?
Totally.
What continent is it on, and what are my lions?
Totally.
It's a beautiful interpretation. Not what I was taking from it, but I like it a lot.
Well, and you get to watch it again with your kids, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious about what your lions are going to be. And if you've watched this episode, tell us what your lions are right now. I don't know. Maybe we can help, right?
Yeah. And like and subscribe to, and no, you were just doing good internet
hosting right stuff. Yeah. Press the button of the things and the stuff. Follow us in all the places.
Leave a comment.
it's sort of time. We're going to talk.
I really liked your little song at the beginning, and
thank you.
I gather that wasn't improvised. So is that part of the song?
That is I just made that up at the time.
Okay.
There's a flavor of an idea that I have, and
I go back and listen to that because your little rhyme was like, as soon as it rhymed, I was like, oh, I can't play this game. As soon as you did that, I was like, oh, damn, cool. And nope.
Yeah, I don't know which part of me did it. And then I lost confidence about like, I haven't said anything about like, did I say anything about TV? I don't know. It's supposed to be this next verse, this next line.
Have you ever watched 8 Mile?
Yes.
Yeah, I think... I know that a lot of the examples of rap in that movie were of rap improv were not. They were rehearsed, but they do a really good job of capturing the feel of improv. Improvised rap looks like magic to me. Like you watch people who can put together clever meaning while keeping it to a rhythm that feels good and rhyming. And they're thinking like a chess master, like 3 moves ahead. I can hardly wrap my head around how a person would develop that skill. It is astonishing to me to watch.
Yeah. Much like improv comedy and also improv song stuff, there are patterns that they give themselves. They're like filler words and themes that they take on and stuff like that. And some of it's very complicated structures that they've taught themselves so they can go in and out of any rhyme scheme. I love it. I have not tried it, done it. I have friends that can and do. It's fascinating. I love it.
That might be one very low on my someday maybe list because I've always been fascinated by that skill, and I'd rather learn that than juggling. But
these are the only choices.
It's not a personal knock on anyone who likes juggling. I'm just saying.
Just a random, completely random inference.
All right. That was awesome. I'll see you next time.
All right.
Deeply. Next time we got to talk about Bill and Ted.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Bye.